and I'm really, really happy to have Yiying with us. How are you feeling today, Yiying? Is it, I actually asked already, but it's still, it's still cool to ask. You look always happy. So
I gotta say, I'm feeling smashing.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear as well. Now, for those of you who don't know, Yiying is an artist, entrepreneur, and educator, and Yiying has been doing so many things, known for so many things as well. She actually grew up in Shanghai, in China, and was educated in Sydney, Australia, and also London, UK. She's currently based and connecting, if I understood correctly, from San Francisco. She's a founder and creative director of a multi-bilingual English and Chinese creative and innovation studio. And most recently, he's been adventuring into the world of things that we all love or hate, which would be NFTs. Do I have any fans of NFTs in the house? Anybody, please write a plus in the chat if you feel like, yep, I belong to NFT or NFTs belong to you. I don't know what's the right way of putting this. Do we have any fans of NFTs? Let me just check in the chat. Oh, well, Adrian has a wonderful suggestion for the friend, Waldorf. Looks like Waldorf to me. Jarine, this is going to be a little bit difficult to pronounce, but that might be working. Well, we could start just by, Yiying, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you come to where you are today? Maybe just a brief background story. It's been very interesting for me to always observe you kind of having all the different backgrounds and then blending them in your work, be it illustrations, be it, just in design in general and everything. And I'm always fascinated by your story of where you grew up and how you moved around places. And I'm wondering at this point, how do you feel? Like, what would be, if somebody asks you where you're from, what would be your answer? How would you even define your the origins, like because I know that it has defined who you are already. So how do you answer that question if somebody asks you?
Well, just like you and me and anybody here in the house, we're all coming from the Big Bang.
Right. So that means this is this is the start of things, right? But then you probably, this is always kind of a difficult story to me because I don't even know what it means. Like, where you're from? It's like where you currently are. It's a much better question to ask, right? But how do you feel? Do you feel like you have more connection to, let's say, US now because you spent so much time there, or your parents are, if I understood, still in Australia? So do you feel like a closer connection to Australia? What is it like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that depends on what is the belief system you have. What is the intention of the question, whether it's in a conference or it is in a particular cultural event. Like if you're asking which district or neighborhood you're coming from, you're probably going to talk about, I'm from south of Market of San Francisco. But if people are saying, okay, where are you coming from to the US? I would say I'm coming from Australia because I lived in Australia for 13 years before I moved here to the San Francisco city and county in the last 8 years. And before I moved to Australia, I was in Shanghai. I was growing up and studied in Shanghai, China. And also in the middle part of Australian trip, I actually went to UK for my education for exchange studies. So it's a bit of blend of everything. So, one fun way to say is I'm from the planet Earth in this lifetime. But I do think, in right now, obviously, we're still sort of post-COVID, but still kind of have to be mindful about traveling. But I think travel is opening up and people are moving from places to places. So I think that if you say you're from the planet Earth, that's a pretty safe answer.
I think so. And I think that Vlad here agrees as well. And I think that Vlad just generally likes planet Earth, right? This is a great answer indeed. Well, maybe you can then move into kind of telling us a little bit more about, and by the way, dear friends, so this is not just about me asking questions, but I would love to see your questions in the chat. I have some prepared, but you are more important than me. So if you want to ask any questions, this is your opportunity to do so. What I'm really interested in, and we had this conversation previously, but I'm always kind of fascinating that whenever the opportunity presents itself for you, Yiying, be it, do this cover for a book or do this poster or a kind of move into NFTs, it doesn't seem like you have this, not friction, you have this reluctance to try new things. It seems like you're trying things all the time. You're doing just, okay, let's try that, let's do that. And I think that many of us are in this position where, well, let's say NFTs as an example, right? Isn't it just a, it's trend or something that will fade away anyway? Do we need to even invest time into understanding what it even means, right? Can we just do our regular stuff? So there's always a little bit of a friction, maybe inertia, I would say, of not doing things just because they show up, because there's so many things showing up. Right. So how do you decide what to do and what not to do? Is it just, oh, okay, let me try that? Or is it kind of strategic where you figure out, okay, maybe I should do video now. Oh, maybe I should do, I don't know, NFTs or anything else. Like, how do you decide where your creative direction guides you?
Well, I think this is such a good question, and I just want to kind of echo somebody. Actually, Heidi said in the chat that with Stardust in us all, and it's like one thing. It's interesting, and it's relevant to the question. Is that, did you know that a star has to burst into dust so that you can have iron in your body? So in some way, we all sort of made of stardust, and I think there is this connection in people and each one of us, even though we might look different, we might come from different countries. There is this sort of connection in us all that bring things together. And I think that's the power of the internet. That's the power of a lot of new modern technology. And when it comes about, people have the same skeptical questions around it. Going back to your question about NFT, there is a reason for this particular technology become available and also become recognizable and also become more and more mainstream. And it is inevitable that a lot of things will become more apparent of their usage. When Twitter came about, when social media came about, let's say, 15 years ago, people are thinking that's probably also a fad or a trend. Like, people were actually questioning if Twitter is even a useful thing, right? A lot of investors at the time toned it down because they just think it's a fad or it's something that probably is not going to be useful. Now, that is something, personally, it's like trying new food. There is a reason why this particular drink become popular. Like, for example, even like boba tea. I think a lot of people were surprised how boba tea is becoming really trendy, and they're like, oh, it's too much sugar. Well, if you think it's too much sugar, then you can reduce the sugar and you can try a natural, healthy version of it. And I believe it's the same thing with NFT. I think a lot of people were criticizing NFT. The technology itself is actually amazing. It's the people who runs the NFT project and also the intention behind how they push the project out. It's the same thing of any of the tech company, any of the, augmented reality, any of the AI technology, right? Artificial intelligence. It's the driving force is the people. So for me, what I'm actually interested in is like to understand the technology first instead of judging the technology, because I believe that any technology can have its pros and cons, depends who and how it's being run. And if we're coming from a more neutral perspective and say, okay, this is new and there's a lot of people are doing it, and maybe there's also a lot of friction around it, what can I do to make it, something that might be useful? And going back to our conversation, I think last time, when one of my friends is actually also not a fan of NFT. He said, oh, I don't really like NFT. What is it? Is it just something that people makes money with JPEGs? And I said, hold on a moment. Let's take a look at the word non-fungible token. Fungible means, fungible literally translates to replaceable, right? Non-fungible, just irreplaceable, irreversible. And token, again, a lot of people have sort of negative connotation around it. And I look into the definition of token. The word token literally is a old English that based from German and Dutch origin, and it actually means to teach. I think the pronunciation is Tagen originally. So literally, like, I think that everything we do in some way is non-fungible because time is irreversible. You can't really kind of replace this smashing hour because we're here, we're talking with the audience, we're spending the time together right now in, Pacific time 8:13. And when the minute is gone, you can't really reverse it. And so I look at the things from a much sort of like a metaphorical way. And I think that if we treat every single day as a non-fungible token, or every single second as a non-fungible token, we are making something that hopefully can be a teachable moment. And same thing with the content that you create. You push the content to the internet, whether it's a posts or whether it's a piece of post, or it's an art piece, it's an animated GIF, or it's a short film. What is it actually supposed to teach the audience? That's actually what I think is the meaning of what NFT is really all about.
Yeah, I think I think there's also a lot of confusion or a lot of skepticism, I think, what is coming from, I don't know, numerous LinkedIn posts about things like NFT is the absolute future, and if you're not participating, you're missing out on the future. And then the same thing, conversations happening around Web3 and crypto, of course, as well. And there is just a lot of, I guess, uncertainty and maybe a lack of trust that many people have into all these buzzwords flying around. Like, I mean, I remember vividly, I've been hearing all those things about things changing our life forever. I don't know, for 20 years now, because everything that's coming up is changing life forever in some way or the other. And then things fail, and then things get bought, and then things disappear. And it seems like things are changing the world in some way, but I'm not quite sure if it's, if you can always point out like this is going to change or that is going to change. You never know. So it does seem like in many ways there is a lot of exaggeration happening in NFT world, in Web3 world, in crypto world, and so on. What is your take on Web3 though? I don't know if you've been kind of looking into the space, but I'm curious, do you think like indeed you can see all this posts saying, well, the thing that is now Twitter is going to become X, right? Because it's going to be decentralized and running Web3. And the thing that's now LinkedIn is going to do that, to become that. And whatever the banks are is going to become this. And Web3 is going to change everything forever. And there is no way back. So is it actually happening, or is it still one of those fairy tales that are being told throughout decades, and we should not be expecting a huge shift in our society and also on the internet?
I think from what I have observed so far, the change is happening. And in the same time, you always have a choice, right? 10, 20 years ago, people started to use email, or even earlier. And at the time, you can live without an email account if you didn't want to participate. Nowadays, email is so ubiquitous, but there are still people who does not use an email, and that's okay. And similarly, there are people who does not have a Facebook account or does not want to participate in online banking, and that's okay. I mean, you can still live. It's just because majority of the people started to adapt that technology, potentially it might be easier, or it might be more convenient in some way when you're doing it. And for me, personally speaking, I was always interested and attracted by where the energy moving to. And I wanted to understand and learn what it is make it count, and what it is make it become a topic that everybody is interested in. And try not to judge. We all judge every now and then because we are human. It's a very natural thing. We'll try to figure out, okay, is this good or bad? But I think for me, I'm just curious, what makes it become something that so many community is interested in. And what I learned actually is to understand the motivation behind it, and also to understand why people are so invested. And one of the human story I can tell you is recently, and there was NFT.nyc. And it was the first time I had the opportunity to go to such big events, because as you know, concert was not really a thing for the last 2 years because it was so not easy to do a larger group gathering, and people are still take repercussion. And I remember I was very fortunate to get a ticket to go to the Moonbird. They had a Moonbird event in the Webster Hall in New York City, and I just saw oceans of people. They're all Moonbird holders, and I was very kind of to me it's very surreal, because you can see all these online interactions and all the things, but part of me was like, I want to understand what is going on here. Why are people buying this, and why are people so invested in this? And I happened to bump into one of the young entrepreneur who is also a holder of the token, and I asked him, I said, why there's so many people? And it was actually Kevin Rose's project. And so he told me, he said, you see, all the people here, they actually know Kevin Rose way back when he was
the dig.com and probably after that.
Yeah. And it was interesting how he told me about the why he was investing, and I think it makes sense, because he said, you see, I was growing up listening to his podcast when I was 14, when I was living in New Jersey, when I was dreamed about going to Silicon Valley, and all these things that's happened in the tech world, that's happening in the West Coast. It seems so interesting and fantastic, and the only way I can get to know this is through his podcast or through his video interview. And I feel connected with him in the last decade, hearing about his story, hearing about his upbringing. And I feel like almost part of the family. And it was very emotional because I mean, obviously that project is kind of different from all the other projects you probably have seen on Web3 space. And going back to the word you say, trust, which I think it's extremely important. And that was also one of the reasons why there's so many people do not feel comfortable with a lot of the current trend, because a lot of projects right now in Web3 are based on anonymity, which is a lot of the artists or the group behind the project didn't show the true identity of themselves, because they're a crypto project and everything is cryptic, right? And so how do you invest in something if you can't even establish trust in the first place? And then you see projects like there's a couple projects. I think one of the notable one was Azuki, which is a P2P project, which is profile project. They minted, I believe it was 10,000, and the founder took the money and kind of ran away. And there's no way to trace it because they were anonymous in the first place. So that is a very good example to illustrate this idea of established trust, and also how the community can engage with the person who, or the group of people who's driving the project. Because once there is an amazing user base, but the foundation is shaky because the Web3 space is allowing anonymity. And when it's anonymous and there's also a lot of money involved, if that's a trustworthy person or group, they will make it even better. And this could be a viable project. But if that person has a different intention, in this case, that become actualized, then that project is going to fail. And so, but just because of that experience shouldn't define the space.
Yeah,
we shouldn't sort of kill the potentiality because certain people's behavior. So that would be my take on Web3. And going back to a very important part, I also think about this idea of anonymity. In my own experience, which I can speak for that because that's my experience, which is, if you think about it, I was born in China, right? I was not educated in the US. I was educated in Australia and UK, and I've never been to Silicon Valley before before I created the whale. I didn't even create the whale for Twitter. I created the whale as my personal art piece and I posted it on the internet. And the next thing you know is the co-founder of Twitter, who happened to be the creative director at the time, Biz Stone, found my image through, later on it's being acquired by Getty Images. At the time it was called iStock Photo. He found my image from the website that I uploaded to, and he used the artwork without knowing that I am a female, without knowing that I am born and raised in Asia and lived in Australia. None of these information in real life was available. The only thing is he resonated with the artwork. In some sense, this is almost like a crypto art, if you think about it, right? Because all my real life information was removed. The only thing that speaks to him was the art itself. And so there is no bias. There is no preference. I am not his real life buddy that we drink together or anything in this lifetime. So he chose this work solely because of the work itself. And that, I think, is really an amazing thing for Web3, because that's actually happening right now. A lot of young, undiscovered artists are able to make money and are able to support their family. I heard some really amazing story of the whale community. The community moderators has been investing their coin to support artists from India, artists from Brazil who are 17, 18, and who are so passionate about showcasing their digital art and making money to support their family. People who invested in artists from Ukraine to support them. And this, in a way, is also removing gender biases, removing all the other biases. I heard this story also recently that one of the orchestra was choosing their performers without seeing their face. They just have a curtain and the artist is playing the violin or cello behind the curtain. So you can't really see the player's face. You don't know what gender and geographic origin they're from. You just listen to the music. And that is the part that I think Web3, that I feel very hopeful. And I was very fortunate to be discovered during Web2 period. And I always think that what can I do to advocate and amplify my story so that more female artists and creators, there's only less than 16 female artists in the crypto space. This was a report from 2021. And I think the number is increasing, but I still think there's a huge disparity between, the folks that is running the space, the folks are creating in the space, and also the folks who are investing in the space. So that's also something I think, if we're saying, oh, we're afraid of the space, we don't belong to the space, then we're never gonna contribute and change the space for the better.
Right. That's interesting that you're saying that, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes we go in circles, right, in our evolution and on the web or in society in general, because I feel like we had this moment for a while where everybody was kind of a little bit hidden behind their AIM numbers and ICQ numbers and so on. And then we wanted to be personal. And so we ended up creating geospaces, MySpaces, and all these things. It was all about us sharing it with the world, and Instagrams and, everything that came in. It's like all expressing us. Look at us. This is what I'm experiencing, what I'm kind of a part of, right? And now with the crypto and Web3, we're like, oh, no, hold on, a little bit too much, oversharing. Let me put the privacy back and let me become maybe a bit more anonymous, or maybe a little bit less personal. So we have maybe a group that is creating some NFTs, right? And then we're pushing it as independent artists, maybe without even sharing our who we are and where we're coming from and all, kind of returning a little bit back to where we were. But what really interests me at this point, I mean, I'm just fascinated by just the incredible career that you has made and all the incredible, I mean, your list of clients just, it's like I don't know, top 100 IMDb movies to me, right? You get New York Times, you get all the fancy big companies, CNN, BBC, Wired Magazine, Bloomberg, Forbes, like all of them, right? So maybe, I mean, I know that some of us who are on this call who are going to watch or listen to it later, they might be beginning in their career. They might be starting out their illustration or design career and might feel like almost impossible to eventually get to work with Time and Wired Magazine and CNN, BBC and all of that. So now looking back, what would you say was the most contributing factor? One was the most important thing that allowed you to end up where you are today, right? Having worked with all these incredible companies and also getting incredible projects all around the world. What was the most significant, I think, step to get there, or steps to get there? It was probably a big, long process.
Thank you. The question, actually, I've asked the same question to Mr. Milton Glaser, who is the person behind the I Love New York icon. And this was 2017. I have a very rare opportunity to have a quick chat with him when I was doing some teaching at NYU Shanghai. And so unfortunately, he passed away, but everything he said still sort of etching in my mind. And I want to share the question I asked him was, what matters? I said, you had so many success and so many wonderful things. What do you think truly matters? And he said, the relationship that you have with the people you live with is the only thing that matters. Fame, money, reputation are bullshit, in his own word. And he said, the only thing matters is your relationship with the people you have spent time with, whether it's in physical reality or online, or, you know, your colleague, your family, and your loved ones. That's the only thing matters, nothing else. And so I look back, I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to have these opportunities. And in fact, none of them was the thing that I ever really chasing for. I don't know, like I would be on New York Times when I was 26. It wasn't even something, it's not that I don't care about it. Obviously, it's such an honor. And I felt incredibly fortunate to have these accolades, but that's not the only way to measure who I am. And also, same thing with the numbers of how many followers people have. I think we are multidimensional beings. And I sometimes feel it's a little bit silly to depend our own worth on how much money we make or how many followers we have. That's just many different directions of measuring things. And again, the measurement itself was also a man-made thing, right? It was invented by some person for the ruler. And so I think, Heidi said personal satisfaction is important, but how do we feel satisfied? You know, how sometimes, how do you know you're happy? And how do you know it matters? This project matters. Does it really matter? You know, I get these, you know, clap your hands. How do you know it's important? And I remember this very important realization the other day. People ask me like, okay, so how did you get all these amazing clients? How did you get Disney? How did you get to be featured on the, you know, BBC? First of all, I think I have an amazing group of people who have been supporting me, whether it's my family or my friends. I didn't have a PR person, you know, for all these years. My work is my agent in a lot of ways. And a lot of times projects given or clients are given through word of mouth, through my existing clients or through the friends that I'm working with. And the project that actually got me the most attention or got me the most widely spread media presence was all personal projects. If you look at the whale, it was not designed for Twitter. It was a birthday e-card that I designed initially to send to friends and family in Shanghai and in London when I was still in Sydney, New South Wales, pun intended. I was creating the whale at the time. I was living in New South Wales and I just finished my school in London at Central St. Martin's, and I still have a lot of schoolmates that's graduating from St. Martin's a little bit earlier than mine because they graduated in the summer in UK, whereas I graduate, I think, much later in the later spring in Australia. So spring here in Australia was autumn. It's a little bit confusing, but I couldn't go to their graduation ceremony. So I made this whale was a symbol or personal expression as my wish for your graduation ceremony was so big. It's like this gigantic whale that carried by little birds across the ocean for you. So it was a metaphor that normally the whale cannot fly because I couldn't physically be there for your birthday ceremony or for your graduation ceremony, but I use the whale as a metaphor. It's like an impossible dream come true. And I always loved surrealism, Salvador Dali and Rene Magritte. So it's my kind of Yiying-fied surreal piece. And the next thing you know, I uploaded to the internet. And at the time, I think uploading work on the internet was a thing. Again, I was very much interested to experiment with technology, right? There's always pros and cons. You know, there are people also saying like they upload work and sometimes, you know, there's pros and cons that you have to weigh it. And for me, I think there's amazing opportunity, which is the work is being recognized and taken by Twitter and become their thing. But the cons is, this is again going back to our discussion about NFT. The cons, the pros is, you know, the work was being taken. The cons is I was a young artist, and like a lot of young artists are struggling with, first of all, they don't have their name out there. The work will be taken, and sometimes there will be no credibility, like the work will be taken, and sometimes they don't get the credit that they deserve. And with blockchain technology, people actually put the artwork on blockchain and everything is actually on the chain. So it's easy for people to trace back and know the origin, which is, you know, the provenance of the work. Who is it by, where is it from, and when it's being created. So in a way, this is actually an amazing way for people to track the origin of the piece. And so that's also something I'm actually quite excited about, the blockchain technology itself, but it's still very new. But going back to our discussion on projects, again, even with Disney project, that was a project, probably one of my proudest project, also one of the most celebrated project. And that project wasn't created because I have an agent knock on Disney's door. It was a project actually was referred by people that I worked with previously for a different project, which was Maybelline New York. And I kept the relationship. Every year I would, you know, send birthday cards, or every year I would try to meet up in person and see how they're doing with their life. And so when the opportunity came up, they thought about reaching out to me, even though we're in different continent. And similarly, Vitaly, we were working together on Smashing Book 2, which is 2010. And we were online friends, and I always wanted to visit you and, you know, come to your at the time, your home base, which is Freiburg. And I didn't know how, but I had that intention of connecting with you. So when the opportunity arises in 2017, I saw that you're doing a Smashing conference in San Francisco. I reached out to you, right? So the rest
and then
is
it all started. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it is that desire of creating something to connect with another person, or to create something, that necessity of expression is the driving force of the work that I've been creating so far. And the necessity of self-expression. The dumpling emoji is the best example. I
Right.
had no idea the dumpling emoji is going to be used by billions of people, or the boba tea emoji. I created it that is solely because of that necessity of have that that piece being seen. I feel like, how can such an iconic food that
Be
billions of people
missing,
are
right?
eating missing, right? It's like
Right.
it's not being expressed. And I just needed to allow myself to facilitate with that expression. And it's coming from me initially, because it is a food that I love, but it just so happened it is also a food that billions of people are liking. And
Yeah.
and when your personal interest and passion is aligning with millions of people or billions of people, or even just one person, a birthday e-card, it's one person, then there's some magic behind it that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if somebody asks me that question, the only thing I can probably be quite certain about is that being visible is what matters really. So it's kind of really picking up your whatever makes you happy, whatever you are very satisfied with, whether you like, I don't know, cats. Do you like this cat? Look at that. There's another name we have to figure out for that wonderful creature. Right?
Oh, I love
And
the cat.
yes, yes, it's somebody was telling me that it's like me. I'm not sure. Oh, this is the
It
camera.
does.
Is it?
It has
I
the
don't know.
resemblance.
Yeah, it's like I don't have such big ears, I think. But yeah, I think like really being visible is the most important part, and be it through articles, be it through, I don't know, photography, be it through anything else. And it's like, there is always this story which I really remember vividly. It's always, you don't need a lot, like hundreds of thousands of people to get going, to kind of to get a momentum. You need maybe 5 people who honestly believe in what you do, who are
Yes.
just happy to carry you on their shoulders everywhere and support you in every way they can. And they are going to be the one who are going to spread the word and make sure that people notice, and they will be talking about you all the time. You just need to find those people who are desperately obsessed and obsessed is the wrong word, but who are desperately fascinated by the work you're doing, by the energy you're bringing and everything. So I think like in this particular case, and I mean, I may be answering my own question, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to do, but I think like that energy that you Yiying bring to your work, to your the personality, right, to your speaking, to your articles, to your podcast, or anything, right, that energy is extremely kind of want to be a part of it in one way or the other, because it kind of comes from love, and it also comes from the place of kind of this internal satisfaction. I think that we had this conversation in the chat as well about being it's very, very difficult to find out what is that when you're satisfied. And I think like my shortcut to this, and I'm no expert by any means, but I think that that you're satisfied when you're smiling. And when that smile and when this laughing or with this kind of happiness, internal happening, is coming from inside. So it's not like somebody's making a joke and you're laughing, but when you feel like, okay, now this is something that makes me happy and make me smile inside. So this has been my thing. And it's even if it's something, it doesn't have to look cute, right? I mean, it's even if it's just an article, I feel sometimes, that's I'm kind of happy to put this all together, to have this all neatly compiled in this little article that I can even refer to myself or kind of send it to anybody else and so on and so forth. And this is also where I'm really answering the question on my own. This is also when you meet people, like we have Greg here on the call. Hello, Greg, can you hear me still? Maybe. And it's so incredible, like even if it's totally off topic, but it's just, sometimes you make connections. Hello, Greg. Sometimes you make connections with people where you think like, okay, so you just met a random person on the internet, right? And then a few years later, you realize, well, you've been establishing a real relationship with that person. So we've been running in San Francisco 2 times, I think. maybe one time,
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure, in San Francisco during the last conference. And Greg is such a nice person, and I wouldn't be able to see him now, and we wouldn't be able to participate, kind of have this shared experience. But if it wasn't for many, many small moments where you feel like you really need to invest in a relationship with a friend, right? And not
Yes.
because you feel like you have to, but because you want to. And so I mean, we actually invited Milton as well for the Smashing Conference 2019 or 2020, I think. But then obviously no conference 2020. I'm not
Oh,
sure when. Then he died. I think 21.
he
If I'm not
passed
mistaken.
away in 2020. Yeah, he passed
2020.
away,
Yeah.
I believe it was June 2020. I
Yeah.
was very
Yeah.
sad about this,
Yeah.
but I feel incredibly just fortunate to be able to meet him in person. And I think that was also one thing I asked him about. What do you think about the evolution of technology? And also, you know, all these new technology came about. And what do you think about it? And he also had a very, very profound answer. He said that cell phone cuts off the human connection in a lot of ways. People are on their phone all the time. And he believes that real life connection and person connection is really the essence of everything. And he said that in Africa, I believe is in West Africa, there was no word for I love you. He said he heard it from a friend, and then he's very curious. Okay, so what do you say? You know, if you want to expressing love, there's because there's no word, there's no word of I love you. So what do you say? And then he said, the friend said, the way they express is I see you in my eyes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Interesting.
he said the more sort of, he suddenly gets it, because when you're able to acknowledge what you see is a totality of accepting and embracing what's existing. And so I thought that was such a beautiful expression. And I think in some way, again, I'm interested in kind of looking at modern technology as a mean to extend that love language. Instead of saying modern technology cuts off the connection, I actually prefer to see how we see it. It's the mindset, right? I won't be able to see you or Greg or Heidi if it's not because of Zoom. I can see you. I can actually connect with you. I can actually see even though we're doing it virtually, but I can see your face. And that itself is miraculous. You know, I was able to do FaceTime with my parents, even though they're in Sydney, Australia for the last 3 years. And so in that case, I think technology can cut off the human connection, but it can also extend and enrich that human experience. It
Right.
really depends on how we do it.
Yeah. But by the way, dear friends joining us, if you have any particular questions that you'd like to ask Yiying, this is your time. I do have one more question, and then there is a question from Jara incoming in the chat. Not a question, maybe more not. You know, it's kind of, I have this litmus test. Whenever I ask myself, when somebody's asking me technology, what's going to happen? Is this going to be the big thing? Is that going to be the big thing? I don't like this kind of questions, because who knows what the future is going to bring. And also thinking too much about the future kind of brings you away from the present, and I like to be in the present. And so I have this ultimate test that has been working really well, so I highly encourage everybody to try it out. Essentially, I asked myself, what would David Bowie say? This is my ultimate test, because David Bowie always knew how to predict what is going to happen with technology. There is this video from him circling from, like, I don't know, late 90s or mid 90s or even late 80s, I think. And he was talking about that connectivity that people will have and what is going to change. And then, 1998, when there was this famous interview with the BBC, in which BBC reporter was saying, well, this internet, it's just a thing that's, businesses, corporates, academia, what is it going to be? It doesn't really relate to society as we know it, to us, right? It's their thing that we kind of just participating, right? And then Boy was like, no, you have no idea what the big picture is here. This is going to change every single mode of communication that people are dealing with, right? on such a profound level, we can't even understand it yet, right? And there are many, many, many things like that which he proclaimed back then. So if you don't know, if you need to answer that question, what's happening with technology, ask yourself what David Bowie would say, and then maybe this would be the answer to that question. There is a question that came also from Jarayan. So, dear Yiying, now if we take away money, ego, brand names out of the equation, what would be your dream project? What would you be? Yeah, what would you love to do, to work on?
Well, that is something I've been very excited to let you all know, that I'm working on a children's book, and maybe just the beginning of many other children's books. I always wanted to work on a children's book because I think that children's book, a real children's book that with the intention of, again, teaching something that is brings out the value, is and I believe everybody should do their children's book. That is something I think that will make the world more interesting
Greg,
and
pay attention.
put together. I think if anything, hopefully in the future I will be able to host children's book workshop or something. I don't know. It's just something I personally very grateful for, because when I was in high school, I went through a very rigorous training, STEM high school. It was one of the probably one of the top STEM high school in Shanghai, in China. Can you imagine? It was like, hundreds of really smart kids and you're competing with, mathematics and computing. I choose that high school because I had a bet with my friend who said that you suck at math, and I bet you're not going to go to the high school because it's a STEM high school. I was originally wanting to go to a literature high school, and I took that challenge. I didn't know what I got myself into. And so I was in this STEM high school for 7 years. It was incredibly, I think it was incredibly useful in hindsight. After like 10 years I graduated, I look back, I was like, oh, I'm actually really thankful that I did this, because I was able to understand engineers and coders and people who are very much mathematic orientated thinking. But, during that time, I was very, every day, I was very depressed. Just not gonna lie, I was very, I think I was very just, every day is kind of repeating itself, feels like. And so the only thing actually really brings me joy was I discovered a small shop that sells all these children's books and magazines, and I ended up reading them, and it really nurtured my soul. It's kind of like a dried, like it really feels like I'm in a desert, and there was this stream of water, and there was this little green sprout that helped me to, it's my guiding light. It was kind of my lighthouse during that time, during sort of the darkest moment, when I think all teenager probably experienced as a teenager. And so I wanted to be able to bring that experience to more people, especially I think to teenagers, when they go through high school. It's a really tough time. I'm sure everybody would have that similar or kind of related experience when you're a teenager, and you wish someone understand you and someone could give you a hand. And I think that the children's book itself really gave me many hands. So I'm just incredibly thankful that I'm working on a children's book right now that's helping people to realize their true self. And the story is called The Extra Dot. So it was this little dot that thought it was an extra dot, and it was try to fit into all these different components that you see on an everyday basis, like whether it's try to fit into a cog in a machine, and then try to fit onto a chocolate cookie, and it just doesn't fit in because there was this extra dot. And in the end, it was so sad, and it was sort of blown away into a crack, and it was covered by dirt, and it was just in this darkness, and I thought it was a Ghana. And then the next thing you know, it realized there was a little green sprout kind of coming out of its head. And then there was this earthworm come by, said, "You're not buried, you're just planted." And so in the end, I think I'm still working on it. It became a tree, and it was actually, you know, a garden, and then there's more life to it. And so for me, I'm very interested in facilitate the opportunity to allow people to find their true nature. And that's what I think a children's book is going to do more, to allow people to discover their true nature, and also to be able to hold on to these values. So when you are going through all these illusion, you know, whether the illusion of, you know, the things that people think it matters, money, status, fame, they know what's actually the most important thing, and they're not going to be deceived by all these illusions.
Right. Wow. I can only agree with Lisa and Heidi in the chat that this is really a beautiful story. So I can't wait to see that book. So do you have any timeline on when you would like it to be finished? Or I know that there are so many things that you're doing at the same time. So what's your timeline? Like December 31st, the
I
ultimate
think
deadline?
I think that I'm working on several different projects at the moment. I'm actually going back to Australia, as I mentioned early on, in December for the Web Direction Summit. So I'm also very excited. I'll be the creative director for this year. And John Alsop, who's Vitaly's good friend and also my good friend, I call him my Aussie brother. We've been knowing each other since 2009. So we've been knowing each other for so long, for 13 years now. And I'm incredibly excited to be back to not only see my parents, but also see my community in Sydney, Australia, and my school, University of Technology, Sydney, all the teachers, professors, students. So I'll be seeing them in Australia as well. So I'm probably going to sort of focusing on that. So I think the children's book, it will be having a companion section as well. I will interview people how they find their true nature. So really, I might interview you, how you started smashing, and a lot of other amazing friends who really have been doing a lot, not only for themselves as a business, but also cultivated a community like the smashing community, which is incredible. And so I want to kind of gather all these stories as a human extension of the extra dot story. So the extra dot is a extraordinary dot. It's seeming like an ordinary dot, but it's extraordinary, which makes it extraordinary. So yeah, that's the story. Nice. Yeah.
That's great. And I think you also, I think that tomorrow you're running a workshop online. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So also this is full disclosure. Vitaly and I will be, actually, I just found out a couple of days ago, we both will be speaking at the Zurich front end conference. So I'm very excited.
Next week, I haven't actually seen, yeah,
next week. We haven't seen each other for more than how many years? 2020? Yeah, 5 years. We haven't seen each other for 5 years. So it'd be great to catch up. But I am, in order to letting people to have a bit of a virtual warm-up before we meet in person, I'm going to host a virtual workshop tomorrow, literally around the same time as now at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is, I believe, Zurich time would be 5 p.m. Zurich time. Is it 5 or 6 p.m. Zurich time?
I think 6.
6 p.m. Zurich time. Yeah, don't come at 5, 6 p.m. Zurich time. And it's going to be a free workshop. So I will be giving a little talk about how I designed the dumpling emoji. And then I'll have everybody draw themselves as their favorite dumpling, experiencing their challenging moment during, the last 2 years, and also their grateful moment during last 2 years. And we can share the story together. It'll be a lot of fun. I've done this with numerous groups and companies, from Airbnb to Jobbox, from Stanford Medical School professors and students to lawyers. It has always been so much fun. So yeah, you're welcome to join us. It's going to be a really interesting workshop, and also it's free. So please join us.
Yeah, I just sent a link in the chat as well, so feel free to join in. So this seems to be some, I mean, I always wanted to create my own dumpling, not just dump emoji, but just dumpling. So that might be a very good opportunity. And now just to finish up our wonderful conversation, Yiying, I do have to ask one question. Now you have a lot of animals in the back, right? I have a panda, I can see giraffe, I can see an orangutan, I think it is, a zebra, tiger, maybe a fox, and another panda, I think. So do you have a favorite animal? What is your favorite animal, Yiying? If you could choose one that would be designed in a huge poster, like imagine a huge, I don't know, 20 stories building, and it needs to be filled in with one single animal. Which animal as a poster? Which one would it be?
I have thought about that question so many times, so I have an answer. It's a rabbit.
It's a rabbit.
No, it's a rabbit. It's a whale rabbit.
What does it look like? Does it look like more like a whale or more like a rabbit?
I will share that on Twitter.
Okay, that sounds very exciting. Well,
it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid of two of my favorite animals, which is it's a whale and a rabbit. So it's a rabbit.
So you don't have strong feelings for giraffe then?
I love giraffe. That's why I made one.
I know. Giraffe.
Is that your favorite?
I feel like giraffes are just really, really friendly. First of all, I think they're vegetarian, which makes them very nice in the first place. And second of all, I was speed by giraffes twice. So that might be a sign that they kind of like me, I guess. But I also was speed by camel twice. So I don't know what it means. But I think that if animals speed at you, that's usually a sign of attraction. So I'm not sure. But I do like giraffes just as I do zebras.
Speed at you? What does that even mean?
Yeah, so I was riding a camel in Sahara, and then the camel just turns and just speeds at me.
Wait, they what? They
yeah,
what,
literally, it's like how they explain it best. So they look at you profoundly, very deep, like they're looking into your soul, and then they just spit at you, like literally with a, the fluid from the mouth. That's not very pleasant, but this is
spit at you. Spit at you. What? Okay, that's fun.
That's like a story of my life. I don't even know why it happens to me all the time, so I better be careful with monkeys around me. So yeah.
I love the fact it spit at you. Well, I think in some way, that this is another children's book I've been working on. I feel like when you say they're looking into your soul, I think that animal are like in some way like human beings. It's just they just have a different costume. We all somehow souls that wrap around in different costumes.
Yeah, in many ways that is true. Well, thank you so much, Yiying. This is the end of the hour. So thanks everyone for joining in. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Yiying. I mean, we've been now chatting and talking for every second week, and then we're meeting next week again now in person. I'm very much excited about this. I assume that we will be sharing some dumplings at this point, shall we?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. Some Swiss dumplings, maybe with a bit of cheese as well. We'll see about that. But I'm very much excited about that. Thanks everyone for joining in. The recording will be available if you came a little bit late, or if you're watching this later. Thank you so much for watching. We will put the recording in the dashboard for you to just rewatch at your convenience. And thank you so much for joining in. Don't forget to join Yiying's workshop tomorrow. If you do like dumplings and you want to create your own dumplings, this is going to be the experience of a lifetime. I'm pretty sure about that.
That's great.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Yiying. Just maybe the last words of wisdom to the audience. Maybe somebody is going to watch us 20 years from now. What would you like them to know from 2022?
Well,
a message to the future.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I just want to say it's so funny that you mentioned about David Bowie just before, and I was literally looking for the lyrics because I went to a Jim Henson exhibition on the last day at the Jewish Museum here in San Francisco. There's actually a really fantastic show about Jim Henson, who is the creator of Muppet. the Muppet Show.
Mhm,
And he's also the director of Labyrinth, if you know that movie, in 1986. And obviously, David Bowie is the Goblin King, right? And so there was a song that was showing in the museum. It was this beautiful scene. You can probably find it on YouTube. It was this beautiful scene of David Bowie, the Goblin King, dancing with Jennifer. Forgot her last name, the main character. So they were dancing, and the song is "As the World Falls Down." That was the song. I was literally looking for the lyrics because David Bowie was singing to her in that scene, was showing in the museum. But I wanted to find the lyrics. This was literally 10 minutes before our conversation started. And I love just sharing the lyrics here. It says that as the pain sweeps through, makes no sense for you. Everything, every thrill is gone. Wasn't too much fun at all. But I will be there for you as the world falls down. As the world falls down, falling in love. And so that was literally before this started. And so I guess according to David Bowie, love is the answer.
That sounds like a perfect answer to me, to my question as well. Well, thank you so much, Ying, for joining. Thanks everyone for joining in as well. I'm very much excited to see you in person next week. And everyone, we are going to have a few more Smashing Hours, so please stay tuned for Smashing Newsletter. We're probably going to announce it soon. Well, thanks everyone. By the way, if you happen to be in Germany, we have a Smashing Conf Freiburg coming up. And if you happen to be in the US, we have a Smashing Conf New York coming up as well. So you can actually find it on the website as well. With this in mind, enough of that. Wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Oh, well, oh, it's only Wednesday, and I wanted to wish everybody a good weekend. That's a little bit early for that. So just have a wonderful rest of the week, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks for being here, Ying. Wonderful to have you here as always.
Thank you. It's great to be with you all. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.